Sure, most people can recognize a fraction when they see one, but do they have a fundamental understanding of what a fraction represents? One can think of fractions as the numbers in between the numbers. They're what we use to express the quantity of something when a typical number, aka a natural number, simply won't cut it. To explain what fractions are and how to solve them, we shall use pizza because pizza is tasty. Let's assume that we have one pizza. Maybe it has all the vegetables or has all the meat. Perhaps it just has a bunch of cheese. Whatever the case may be, the toppings don't matter here. You do you, boo. The only thing that matters here is that we have one whole pizza that has yet to be cut and divided into equal slices. In mathematical terms, what we have is extremely simple and straightforward. We have one pizza. As civilized individuals, however, we don't just pick up an entire pizza and eat it whole. No, we divide the pizza into sections, aka slices. In this case, we cut the pizza into 8 separate sections, ending up with a grand total of 8 slices of pizza. Even though the pizza has been divided into 8 slices, we still have the same amount of pizza we started out with. Really, the only difference is how we categorize the quantity of the pizza. In other words, one pizza equals 8 slices. We could also phrase it like this: a whole pizza is comprised of 8 slices. And here we have a fraction. The top number is the numerator and the bottom number is the denominator. It's often helpful to think of a fraction as parts of a whole. We have 8 parts of a whole pizza, and the whole pizza is comprised of 8 parts or slices. We have the fraction 8 over 8, but we don't leave this fraction as is. Why, you ask? Well, it's because the quantity isn't in its reduced form, i.e. its simplest, truest form. Yes, we have 8 parts of an entire pizza, but what does this really mean? We have one pizza. No slices have been added nor subtracted. Mathematically, we arrive to this conclusion by recognizing that the numerator and the denominator share at least one factor other than 1. Keep in mind that a factor is a number that can be divided into another number perfectly. As such, the factors of 8 are 8, 1, 4, and 2. When both components of a fraction share a factor other than 1, that fraction can not only be reduced, but also must be reduced. To reduce a fraction, you simply divide both the numerator and the denominator by the same factor. Ideally, you choose the largest common factor because it eliminates the number of times you have to reduce the fraction. Because 8 is the largest common factor of the numerator and the denominator, we divide both components of the fraction by 8. And we know, of course, that any number divided by itself results in a value of 1. So now we have the fraction 1 over 1. But what, I hear you cry, what does 1 over 1 even mean? Remember, you can do one of only 4 things in math. You can add, subtract, multiply, or divide. The fraction bar that separates the numerator and the denominator is nothing more than another way to write the division symbol. What does this mean for us? We actually have a division problem, 1 divided by 1, which equals 1, of course. The entirety of the pizza still remains. Therefore, it wouldn't be appropriate to quantify the amount of pizza we have as a fraction, because no pieces or slices have been added or subtracted. This is why simplifying fractions is so important. But you ordered the pizza to eat some of it, did you not? Let's say that you decide to eat 2 slices of pizza, translating to 2 over 8, or 2/8. 2 parts of the whole pizza have been consumed, and how delicious those parts were indeed. So, what remains of the pizza? To determine this, we need to perform some subtraction. Firstly, we have one entire pizza, but then we eat 2 slices. 1 pizza minus 2 slices. Oh, but this simply won't do because we have 2 completely different types of quantities. In math, everything must be on the same playing field, equally proportionate to all aspects of the problem. This is an easy fix, however, because we know that this one pizza is comprised of 8 slices. Now we have 8 slices minus 2 slices. And now we can perform a proper subtraction operation. When subtracting 2 fractions, the denominator must be the same number, and in this case, both denominators are 8, so easy peasy. We just need to subtract the 2 numerators just as we would with a standard subtraction problem. This leaves us with 6 over 8, or 6/8. 6 slices over 8 slices. Are we done here? The answer is no, my friends, because 6 and 8 share a common factor of 2. This fraction can therefore be reduced. 6/8 equals 3/4. When everything is said and done, we are left with 3/4 of an entire pizza, or we could also say 3/4 of a pizza. To add fractions, the process is exactly the same. Make sure that the two denominators are the same number and simply add the numerators. Let's say that you took 2 slices of pizza, put them on your plate, but then decided that you will, in fact, start that diet today. Due to your newfound determination, you put one of the 2 slices back. Now, how much pizza do we have remaining? 6/8 plus 1/8. This leaves us with 7 out of 8 slices, or 7/8. But can we reduce this fraction even further? Nope, because 7 and 8 do not share any common factors other than 1. Up until this point, we have been working with fractions that share a common denominator, i.e. both of the bottom numbers have been exactly the same. But how do you approach 2 fractions that do not have a common denominator? So we have been working with only one pizza, and that one pizza is divided into 8 equal parts or slices, and we still have this pizza. However, your friend decides to order another pizza from a different business, and this pizza company does things a little bit differently. Instead of cutting their pizzas into 8 slices, they like to divide them into 4 slices. Remember, the first pizza is comprised of 8 slices, meaning that 8 slices out of 8 slices translates to one entire pizza. The second pizza, however, is comprised of 4 slices, meaning that 4 slices out of 4 slices translates to one entire pizza. You eat 1 slice from your pizza while your friend eats 2 slices from their pizza, leaving us with this question that must be answered. How much pizza did you and your friend consume in total? You, 1 slice out of 8 slices, or 1/8 of your pizza. Your friend, who is clearly not on a diet and is instead living their best life, 2 slices out of 4 slices, or 2/4 of their pizza. Being the astute individual you are, you probably noticed something here. 2/4 is a reducible fraction because the numerator and the denominator share a common factor of 2. Thus, 2/4 is reduced to 1/2. Yes, your somehow thin friend ate half of their pizza. Now let's put these two proportions together. 1/8 plus 1/2. And now we find ourselves in a true pickle indeed. Whatever do we do? Is all hope lost? Nay. Just like in Star Wars, the key to solving fractions lies within the balance of the force. In other words, we just need to make the 2 fractions equivalent in terms of their proportions. When we achieve this so-called balance, we can add or subtract all day long. We know what must be done, but how do we do it exactly? Well, my young Padawan, we simply need to find the least common multiple of our 2 denominators. When we say least common multiple, we are talking about the smallest number that 2 numbers can be divided into without leaving any remainder. For our denominators, we have 8 and 2. Let's list the multiples of 8. The first multiple of 8 is, 8 because 8 times 1 equals 8. The second multiple of 8 is 16 because 8 times 2 equals 16. The third multiple of 8 is 24 because 8 times 3 equals 24. Now let's switch over to the multiples of 2. The first multiple of 2 is, of course, 2. The second multiple of 2 is 4. The third multiple of 2 is 6, and the fourth multiple of 2 is 8. Notice something? After making a multiple list for both numbers, we arrive to a shared multiple, 8. This makes 8 the least common multiple of 8 and 2. Once you arrive to a common multiple, you move on to the next phase, making the 2 denominators the same number. To do this, we multiply each component of both fractions by whatever value is necessary so that both denominators are the same, but the proportions of both fractions remain unchanged. 1/8 already has 8 as its denominator, so we don't need to do anything to this fraction. In essence, we multiply the numerator by 1 and the denominator by 1 to end up with the same fraction, 1/8. In order for 1/2 to become a fraction with 8 as its denominator, however, we must multiply the numerator and the denominator by 4. Why? Because 4 times 2 equals 8. And when we manipulate the denominator, we have to do the same thing to the numerator. Remember that whole balance of the force concept. 1 times 4 equals 4, 2 times 4 equals 8. And now we have 4/8 rather than 1/2. Notice how the proportions are still exactly the same. With both denominators on equal footing, we can now add the two fractions. 1/8 plus 4/8 equals 5/8. Do not forget to reduce if possible, though in this case 5 and 8 do not have any common factors greater than 1, so we cannot simplify the fraction anymore. In terms of the question we are seeking to answer, 5/8 doesn't really do us much good because we want to know how much pizza has been consumed between you and your friend. The beautiful thing about fractions, though, is that they can be converted into percentages to give us a greater understanding of a value. Luckily, changing a fraction into a percentage is actually pretty simple. All you have to do is divide the numerator by the denominator because remember, the fraction bar signals the division operation. Just be careful to divide the numerator by the denominator and not the other way around. Using your calculator, 5 divided by 8 results in the decimal 0.625. After rounding, we end up with 0.63. To convert this decimal into a percentage, we need to move the decimal point 2 spaces to the right. In other words, we multiply the decimal by 100. 0.63 times 100 equals 63%. It is important to note that a percentage is really just a fraction. In this case, our fraction would be 63 over 100 or 63 100ths. Now we have a better understanding of how much pizza you and your friend truly consumed. In total, you both consumed 63% of the pizza. Conceptually, this means that you all ate more than half of the pizza you have, and just like that, we have solved a real-world problem using fractions. Outstanding. We now know how to add and subtract fractions, but what about multiplying and dividing them? Multiplying fractions is surprisingly easy. All you have to do is multiply the numerators, multiply the denominators, then simplify if possible. Let's return to the previously used fractions 1/8 and 1/2. Since we will multiply these fractions, we do not need to go through the process of finding the least common multiple of the denominators. We just need to multiply. The numerators are 1 and 1. 1 times 1 equals 1. The denominators are 8 and 2. 8 times 2 equals 16. This results in 1/16. If we need to divide fractions, we need to flip the numerator and the denominator of the second fraction and change the division symbol to the multiplication symbol. 1/8 divided by 1/2 becomes 1/8 times 2 over 1, or 2. And this results in a value of 2/8. Since 2 and 8 share a common factor of 2, we must simplify. 2/8 becomes 1/4. Typically, when fractions are involved, the numerators are smaller than the denominators. These, my friends, are called proper fractions. But what if you end up with fractions that look like this? The numerators are larger than the denominators, resulting in a value greater than 1. These are called improper fractions, and it is exactly what it sounds like. It is downright wrong, because we don't think in these terms. After all, how could we have more parts than all the parts of the whole? There is no need to fret, however, because there is a way around improper fractions. First, let's look at an improper fraction using our lovely pizza analogy. Once again, you have one whole pizza. This pizza is cut into 8 slices for your enjoyment and convenience, but see, you set a goal for yourself. You promise yourself that you will eat no more than 2 slices. This means that the denominator in our fraction shall be 2, because this is our limit. But you break your own promise by eating an extra slice for a grand total of 3 slices, making our numerator 3. Now we are working with an improper fraction of 3/2. But how do we change this dirty improper fraction into a clean proper fraction? Well, we divide. 3 divided by 2. Because 3 is larger than 2, we know that we are going to have a remainder when we divide. 2 can go into 3 only one time, leaving us with a remainder of 1. Great, but we need to turn all of this into a fraction. More specifically, we need to turn this into a mixed number. A mixed number is a whole number attached to a proper fraction. In other words, a mixed number is somewhere between 2 whole numbers. In this case, our mixed number will be a value between the numbers 2 and 3. Because 2 can go into 3 evenly only one time, our whole number is 1. For the fractional aspect of the mixed number, the numerator will be whatever the remainder is. So, in this case, the numerator is 1. Our denominator is the same as the denominator of the improper fraction. The improper fraction, 3/2, becomes the mixed number 1 1/2. What does this mean for you? There's no question you went over your pizza allotment of 2 slices of pizza, but by how much exactly? We can turn our mixed number into a percentage just as we did before. We can achieve this by turning each component of the mixed number into a percentage first. So let's start with our whole number, 1. Remember, to turn a number into a percentage, we need to multiply by 100. This means that 1 becomes 100. Now we convert the fractional part of our mixed number, 1/2, into a percentage as well. As a decimal, 1/2 is 0.5. Multiply 0.5 by 100 to convert this value into percentage. 1/2 becomes 50%. When we add the two percentage values together, we end up with 150%. This is the total amount of pizza you ate. This percentage mathematically reflects what we already know. You ate more pizza than you originally planned to eat, and that's okay. The damage is done. In terms of quantity, how much more pizza did you consume? Well, if we go by the number of slices, you went over your budget by 1 slice. Proportionately speaking, however, you went over your pizza budget by a whopping 50%, which may not be ideal, but you know, it can always be worse. You are trying your absolute best. See, when I was a young lass sitting at my tiny desk in middle school, I didn't understand fractions at all. It's not until I started applying them in real-world applications that they started to make at least a little bit of sense. If you too find yourself struggling with fractions, please understand that you are not alone. Hopefully this video gave you at least a tiny bit more insight into fractions and how they can be used to add perspective to your life and everyday decisions.